Today we will talk about rectangular bottom. Very interesting interlacing. For the first time I saw it from my classmate in the newspaper Weaving Circle, then on the Land of Masters. I will give you the links later. At first I tried and got a bit disappointed. It seemed to me too laborious at the first impression. But I decided not to give up and to learn to make this kind of bottom. The first one was the green one. The next one was the tray, where I was cutting the poles. And there is one more experimental variant with the cut-off poles, but I felt that something was wrong, that I had to improve something to make the item look neater. These three last rectangular baskets are the very ones I'd like to show you. The ones whose neatness I am more satisfied with. Notice that there are no more cut-off tips, and it makes the item look much better. It is the way the bottoms look from the opposite side. Here I was using the white stripes. Here I used the tubes. Here the stripes again, but a little narrower. So we start laying the groups of 3 tubes. One can use groups of 2, but I prefer triple ones. I have lengthened them to make them stick outside the form. So far it will be enough. If we need more, we will add later. The next. So we were putting the lengthwise tubes, now we put the transverse ones. Actually, the main difficulty is only in the first stage. So, we have put the lengthwise tubes, we have put 3 transverse ones. Now we put the lengthwise tubes, but as if on the second floor between the lower lengthwise tubes. I don't glue them to each other, it is too laborious. The main task is to overcome the first stage, and later glue will not be needed anymore. Notice 3 beneath, 3 above, 3 beneath, 3 above. These are all our lengthwise tubes. So we have put the first floor of lengthwise tubes, then go the transverse tubes, the second floor. We have put them this way. Now we start the stage of interlacing. For this I have taken the tubes, but sometimes I used stripes as well. The tubes should be soft enough. Compress the tube and start interlacing. Lead it at first downward. Leave the tube to be able to use it later for weaving. Then lead it up. Then insert it down again. The first row is the most difficult one, because we have to put them evenly. Now I hug the upper 3 and lead it underneath. Then there have to be the upper 3. Hug it and prepare the lower 3. It can be the group of 3 or the group of 2. Once I've tried to make it fast and use group of 4, but anyway, when the tubes are thinner and there are fewer of them, the item looks more delicate. One more essential thing is not to get carried away and to make the bottom fit to our form. This way we bend and fit the form. We need a little more. Above and underneath. Lead underneath, fit the form, that'll do. So, we have made the first stitch. Take the next group of 3 transverse tubes. Now it will be easier. We lead them in the same way as our first group of 3 was lying. On the first group under the second one, on the first under the second, and go further this way. The tips of the tubes are a little bit thick, it's somewhat hard to insert them. But in general, if the tubes are thin and flexible enough, then it is easier. Make it even and push closer to the stitch. Take the next tube and stitch our lengthwise tubes again. Under, onto, pull, take the third group of 3, lead, help with your fingers, lift this group a little, pull the next one down a little, pull up, down. The next stitch, there is the last row left. The work goes faster now. The tubes lie firmly and we don't have to hold them. That is the most difficult task, is to hold the tubes in the beginning. Here they hold firmly already because of interlacing. That's why it is much easier and more pleasant to work. Here we pull and hold with clothespin, not to let the tubes fall apart. And lead the last row with transverse tubes. Fit the form. The length is sufficient. Now the next stage. We can cut the tubes. We'll cut the upper ones and the transverse ones and braid the poles. It is one of the variants, but I dislike cutting because the edge doesn't get very smooth and one has to mask it somehow. Here I had to mask it with the tubes. You see, I had even to glue the tubes to make the edge more or less smooth. So then I decided to try twining the remainders without cutting anything. So, what I do? I take the tubes, bend them, I put the stripe that I was interlacing with into this bunch of tubes as well, and start twining round. The thinner the stripe is, the more difficult it is to twine. That is why I tried to use thicker stripes as well, but anyway it is possible. The first row is the most difficult one as well. One. Bend the group of 3 tubes together with a stripe and twine in the regular way of rope. Bend the group of 3 lengthwise tubes, 3 transverse tubes, the stripe, collect them into one bunch, take the additional tubes we will be weaving with, and start weaving in the usual way of rope, hugging the whole group. These groups will make the corners more solid. Bend the next group of 3 transverse tubes and the stripe, and twine them round with the rope. Take the next group of 3 tubes and the stripe, twine them round again. Here are 3 tubes and the next 3. Take the next 3, add the stripe. The wickerwork will be rather thick because of the amount of the tubes. I weave 3 or 4 rows this way. And then we can cut part of the tubes. And it will be easier to weave. 1 plus the stripe, hug all the 4 tubes, 3 more, plus the stripe. It is important not to tangle in them at first. 3 plus 1. And continue weaving this way up to 3 rows to fix the stripe. Afterwards I will cut the stripe. So I have woven 2 rows and started the 3rd row. 3 rows are usually enough for fixing. And then we can cut, for example, 1 stripe and 1 more pole from transverse ones, and continue twining round 2 poles. At least I've done this way in this item. I was lengthening 1 tube from each group, so I finished twining 1 tube round in each group and made the bending at the end. Here I have just cut the remainders. It was a more raw variant. I've left them this way and I'm still thinking what to do. And here I was twining 3 tubes in each group up to the end. You can even see the poles. Then, because there were the office tubes, they are very thick, I didn't feel like making the bending. I've just cut everything and used the flat way of weaving, the 4-tipped one, we are already familiar with it, and glued it with the help of glue gun, and made the grip in the same way. I want to draw attention. I liked interlacing with stripes more. If you want to make it faster, it's first thing. And secondly, it makes the distance between the poles more, and it is easier weaving this way. That is, there are several options. It is up to you to choose. I wish you success in weaving.